Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Struggle. I'm Jason Blackledge. This is Mr. Jeff Monroe.
Right. Yeah. You got it right.
I'm back.
Yeah. Welcome back from Hawaii, evidently.
Yeah, man, Magnum PI, man. I went on vacation and now all I wear is Hawaiian shirts.
Well, it's
I've
good,
decided.
man. It's good that you got a vacation. It's very important, I think, for people, especially in this industry,
Yeah.
to try to get some mental health breaks and break away from it all, man. Spend some time with the family. So
It was good, man. It was a fun time. I did kind of feel some kind of way because you talked about how great the podcast was.
Well, not
last
me,
last
but it
time.
was everybody else that said,
made
it's
sure-
so great without you.
Made sure to text me while I was on vacation to inform me how great it was.
I did. It's like, it was great. And
Yeah.
I remember, when we came in here, we started it. Ken sends me like the edits and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and I'm sitting here and I'm talking at the front, and I'm like, man, Jason usually does this. Like, I don't know. I was like, Scott, you.
I'm like parasailing, and this
Yeah.
dude's like, "Man, we did so great without you," you know. So
It just goes to show you how much you're not needed.
that's it, man. I've come to that conclusion. So,
Yeah.
well, man, we were talking about earlier, on the way here about what we want to talk about
Yeah.
today, and you had brought up something. Speaking of last podcast, something y'all had talked about, but I believe something that really resonated with you.
Yeah.
And
So I had Scott Sandage on the last episode, and he's our clinical director out in Hammond and for our Bogalusa location. And he's a licensed professional counselor.
he looks smart, man.
Yeah, and
Like, he just looks smart.
he's got some great hair. I'm
Yeah,
very
he
envious
does.
of it, But man, we were sitting here, we're going back and forth, like we do, the banter, and and I wanted to have somebody on that has no experience in addiction,
Yeah,
right?
in the
Had
actual-
no struggles
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and just try to get like their mindset and their understanding of it. And I asked him this question of like, okay, so tell me what your knowledge of addiction was and what your perception of it was, prior to like working here.
Mhm.
And what he said, like, really had a profound effect on me because he was like, well, you mean like in college? Or I was like, you just tell me. He's like, well, going through school, we learn about addiction and the mental health based off of what their criteria says, right? And he said that word criteria, and what the DSM-5 says that this is what I've got to diagnose you
Yep.
with based off some letters and numbers. And I was like, it's like, man, that really like hit me, is like that, these insurance companies and these, licensed clinicians that go through school that had no experience. That's before they get to working in a facility like ours, that's how they see it,
Yeah.
And like I was telling people like after that of like something he said, and LASAC convention was last week, and there was a bunch of clinicians and stuff, and we went out to dinner, and I kind of mentioned that,
Yeah.
and and that's just something you don't think about,
Mhm.
you don't think about how other professionals in this business, or even other people view addiction. I would say somebody that's not even in a profession like that can say, oh, well, there's somebody that doesn't know how to stop and they have this problem. Why can't they do? Why do they do all the shit that they do? And then you have a credentialed professional that makes it their career and that goes through school, and their outlook on those that have an addiction problem or diagnosed with substance abuse addiction
Yeah.
has to meet a certain criteria.
Yeah, these criteria.
Dude, and I'm like, for us, that's like our life, and that was a lifestyle for so long. And it's not letters and numbers and criterias and all these things. It's who we are. It's embedded in us.
Yeah.
And it was like, I just thought it was very profound.
I think, because one of the things is in the 12-step program, it talks about like what is
Mm-hmm.
our criteria,
Mm-hmm.
right? When I start, I can't stop,
Mm-hmm.
or I have no control over the amount that I take,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the
Yeah,
criteria that we
for
look at,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
And then hearing you talk about it, and my first thought is like, I guess was going to ask you is like, do you look at that as a negative, a positive, a both?
Yeah, I don't I guess I don't really have, a negative or
Yep.
positive outlook on it. I just look at it as like um this idea
Yo.
of, you know, somebody's life,
Yo.
right? And it's put into a category.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I looked at it as, and I guess I always knew that, but it until it was kind of said out loud, it didn't kind of resonate with me. Is that
Click.
hey, some people consider us just a category of people.
Yo.
You know what I mean?
And
Like,
it's like my first thought as you were talking about is almost takes just my humble
mhm.
opinion, it takes the human element out of it
Right,
though.
right, and that's what
You
I'm
know,
saying. Yeah.
is like it's like at this point it's not Jeff,
Mhm.
it's you know whatever it may, amphetamine, substance use disorder,
Right.
F1342,
Mhm.
whatever it may be,
Yeah,
right?
I'm just some F code.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And look, I know Scott did not mean it in
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
way, and
He was just answering a question.
he was answering a question, but he answered that with how he was taught. You know what I mean? And so that's something else that I look at is like, okay, you go through school, you go get your degree, and you go into an intern at a substance abuse
Yeah.
facility, and then you start hearing the stories,
Hmm.
and then their F codes take on a personality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's like that's another thing that I just started looking at. And it just takes that sometimes somebody saying something that can trigger something in you to view things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I just hearing you talk about it, it's like I guess the way you said it, because I'm thinking, well, it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, it's this, because for
Mhm.
people like Scott,
Mhm.
people like obviously our industry needs those people, right?
Absolutely. And
Eh,
so grateful and thankful
yes,
for
man,
Scott.
because and there's another, we've asked him to come on here,
Mhm.
but somebody that I really admire, very smart also, Brandon that worked with
Mhm.
us for a long time,
Yeah.
and hearing stuff, but I'm thankful for it because it's a whole different perspective on things,
Yeah.
a different approach on things. I often tell people, like, I had the opportunity, a short opportunity, to to do some clinical work with
Mhm.
him when I first started, and when I say short, like 2 weeks, man, I wish I would have had the opportunity to do more. And he was really big to
Yeah.
say, "Hey, man, that's recovery lingo,
Mhm.
not clinical lingo. Like,
Yeah.
here's the clinical way to say that. You don't say character defects, you say maladapted behaviors.
Yeah.
You don't say
Mhm.
this, you say this, And just thankful for that. And then I think about, like, I don't know, I'll get lost in that kind of stuff, but doctors,
Mhm.
that every single person that they see is like, at the end of the day, is just a code.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
not putting, and I wonder if that's, when you work in this field.
Well, I think when you work in it for so long, is it something where you have to look at it
Yeah.
like that, and like because the amount of stories and the heartache of these people, kind of okay, like Dr. Silkworth,
Hmm.
when he was talking about it in the doctor's opinion of that book that we have
Yeah.
everywhere, right? That it affects his waking hours,
Hmm.
and there's very little impact that the doctor has on those with the alcoholic problem,
Hmm.
and he just saw through this 12-step program people actually staying sober,
Yeah.
right? And so I mean, I think there's some doctors or physicians that truly want to have an impact on the addiction world,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day it's like, okay, I want to have an impact, but I also got to get paid, so I got to bill the
Yeah.
insurance company. So you are part of this category. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
But another thing I think about, that, and this is why I said I like, is because man, like you can get on social media, you can get on all that stuff and see some, you know, whoever,
Mhm.
talking about how I'm sorry, addiction's not a disease. You
Yeah.
just don't have the willpower. You don't. But when you start talking about it in this category and
Mhm.
people meeting certain criteria
Yeah.
from like medical and clinical points of view, and that like that's why the argument of it's not just don't have enough willpower or
Mhm.
just chooses not to, you know, just like somebody that has high blood pressure or this or that would,
Yeah.
they meet certain criteria, so they fall under this category. And these are some ways that we can treat this criteria, like you're
Mhm.
saying,
Yeah.
and I think that's a good thing. I hate that argument with people where it's like, um, I'm a true believer in the
Mhm.
disease concept of addiction.
Right.
There is something um different,
Mhm.
from the alcoholic, the addict, the this, the that, just like there's something different.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's just take it a little bit step further. They did declare, substance abuse as a disability,
Mhm.
right?
Wait, I
Y
can get a check?
uh,
Wait a second.
maybe
I need to call my boss when
but
we leave.
you can get specific fundings for
Mhm.
school and stuff
Schooling,
like
yeah.
that. I have to go through sometimes with the city and the state for housing. There's so many sober livings out there. One of the things is that allows us to have sober living is because these houses are there for those with substance abuse
Mhm.
disability, right? And they're covered up underneath the Disability Act,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm grateful that of the strides that we've made in this world to see that it's not just like you said, somebody that just doesn't have enough willpower, that it is actually a disability
Yeah.
that some of us struggle with.
Yeah, I think we could have a whole probably
Oh, for sure, dude.
hours,
Hmm.
depending on where people stand on that that thought process. I'd be willing to bet that not a ton of people would agree
Hmm.
with that statement outside of like medical, like you're saying,
Hmm.
professional or people that have been in it,
Oh yeah, I mean,
like
I'm I'm quite sure that some people will watch this and say, well, I don't consider it a
yeah,
disability, right? But you have to look at what it does to people and what it does to the families of these people and the ripple effect that it has. How could it not be called a
yeah.
disability? You know what I mean?
I watch, I'm gonna mess this up because I'm on the spot, but I watched somebody the other day say that like the disease of addiction
Mm.
is the only disease that you can actually be better after
Mhm.
than you were before.
Right,
They
right.
said like if you think about it, any other disease you get, the best you can possibly get is
It's
to
to
right
recover
right
from
where
that.
you
Yeah.
were
Mhm.
before. But
Mhm.
in recovery, you actually have the ability to not just get where you were before, but actually be better than.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting take,
Oh,
when I heard
absolutely.
that.
And I think, that's where I find a lot of gratitude in year after year. The
Mhm.
longer I'm, sober, the longer that my life is going on a greater track, I'm able to look back on that and say, yeah, I'm definitely better off than what I was
Mhm.
before, for sure.
So when you were talking, so the convention you were talking about is a
Hmm.
lot of professional, a
Yeah.
lot of smart people, right?
Yeah.
And Jeff.
And Jeff, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of smart people, a lot of troublemakers, and then there's just me,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, I guess the question I was going to ask is you had talked a little bit about that and like
Hmm.
was there any did you get any kind of outside point of view from any of those other people on some of that?
No, because I only want to listen to my point
I
of
got
view
you.
for sure. That's why
Or if they said
it's why
something you
all
don't know what it
and just
was.
yeah. You're talking about what I was mentioning
Hmm.
earlier.
About the
Um,
diagnosis and
well,
people's
I
addiction.
think just bringing that up in a group of people like that, some licensed clinicians, some addiction clinicians, right? They both kind of had their own views, and it was kind of like trying to think of the word here, just kind of uh was it now I can't think of the word. I just lost track. Your shirt was distracting
Yeah,
me.
man. It can do.
Um,
That's why I wore it.
I think they all kind of looked at it like that. One's like, yeah, I didn't really think that's how we saw it.
Mhm.
And those that are substance abuse counselors didn't think that that's how, some people see things,
Yeah.
especially, um, going through this period of time of education, and then not seeing those individuals in the setting that they get thrown into.
Mhm.
Like I was talking to Scott, Scott was a high school teacher,
Yeah.
high school. I don't know.
I'm telling you,
My
boy.
Monroe
Every
accent.
so often, generally when it comes out is when you're getting bossy.
Yeah.
But
My Monroe accent came out, right? He was a high school teacher and like, went into his education and made a career choice to go into this field. And he started to see things, he had a passion for the stories he started to
yeah.
hear, and so I think that that's just goes to show you, what can change your point of view.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
And I think that, I'm sitting here thinking about it is like also I think it would fall under this talking about diagnosis and
Mm,
these type of things and how do other people maybe outside of, you know, being an addict or an alcoholic,
mm.
but I mean I say this is goofy. I hate saying these cheesy things because I
Mhm.
like it's like the
But
like
you
how does
got
that make you feel while I'm
yeah,
holding a pad,
right.
kind of thing. But it's like, man, I believe that
Right,
that
that's the things that you learn,
yeah,
right?
yeah, like,
Yeah.
but the statement of like it's we're not trying to help bad people become good people.
Mhm.
We're trying to help sick people that have, like you said,
Mhm.
they've met a criteria, they have these diagnoses, become well.
Mhm.
Trying to help that disorder, that criteria that's met. Um, I think also splitting it up different, man, because you talk about it like detox and
Mhm.
this and that and all those different aspects. How much of that has changed now?
Oh, absolutely.
Based on these different criterias.
Mhm.
You know,
I was
I can't
just
keep up half the time, man.
oh, I know. I was just thinking about this too. You were mentioning, Brandon kind of coaching you, and I had, Ryan Phillips
Hmm.
in my, growing up in my career, early on in my career of being a counselor, learning from him, learning what to say, learning what not to divulge about myself, and last week when we were doing this, I was like, you know, all I had was my
Yeah, at
experiences
the time.
at the time, and that's just what I did in group. Me and you meet, at least every weekend or every other weekend, and that's some of the things you and I worked on too. Of like, going into a clinical role of like, hey, I got to separate my recovery experiences
Yeah.
because yes, it can have a benefit, kind of like we were talking about, but also I think it can um be not I don't want to say detrimental, but not as of effective,
Yeah.
because when I came in, yeah, I wanted somebody that that knew what I was going through. You don't know what I've been through. Well, I can say I can, but I also wanted somebody that could provide me a clinical answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, well, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
I and I would love an educated answer,
Hmm.
right?
And it's the approach, man. I think that, I always talk about the like, and we've talked about it on this podcast, using
Mm,
every single tool available, right?
yeah.
And like, at work in a treatment center, you want to be the clinical tool.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't need I don't need to sponsor these
Mhm.
guys. I'm not.
Right.
There's other people that come in and do 12-step stuff, that do this, that do that. It's like, I'm trying to be that clinical
Mhm.
aspect for them.
I think one of the what makes one of the some of the best clinicians, Corey Woodson was always good with this too. Just to kind of give him a shout out, but those that are able to use 12-step program and combine that with their
Yeah.
clinical knowledge in a group setting and
Mhm.
kind of just m- merge both of those together,
Yeah.
right? Because that's kind of who I learned from was Ryan and Corey.
Yeah.
Corey trained me for a little while because he was getting out of the clinical role. And doing the
Back in it.
education. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Try to talk to him pretty good bit, man. But yeah, and I think that's something like you and I discussed. That's where you're trying to increase your knowledge from those individuals that have that, right? Because you got the addiction part down, right? Yeah, we know
I
that
think
about
so.
you, you know.
Yeah, man.
But it's learning the clinical
Yeah.
terms. It's learning how to apply those clinical terms to help the clients that we have,
Mhm.
um, knowing that, hey, uh, they meet this criteria,
Mhm.
right? So how do I treat that, right? Well, you do your research. You ask some other professionals how they treat somebody with this particular diagnosis,
Yeah.
right? Um, or how do you treat the substance abuse part, and how is it um, intertwined with their other diagnosis,
Yeah.
right? Because you can't really treat somebody with bipolar. You can't, all you can do is
Yeah, the
work with
co-occurring
them,
parts of
right?
it and how they
Mm-hmm.
they relate. I think it's look, man, wrapping up, man, talking about it too. But for those watching that
Mm-hmm.
are talking about like, well, I don't, diagnosis and this and that, but like from the
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic side, right?
Yeah.
Sitting here thinking about it from that point of view, though, it's like I have to understand at times that when I go to the doctor, when I go to these places, this and that, man, I pulled up, what do they call it? My chart.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked at yours?
Yeah, I was just in it
Have
yesterday
you
because I
been?
got to
It's
go to the
great.
doctor next
Man,
week. Yeah.
man, it kind of made me sick a little bit talking
Mm-hmm.
about IV this
Mm-hmm.
from all of my stuff, and
Yeah.
it's like they're still gonna pull that up and see me
Right.
as some of those things because that's the best way
Mm-hmm.
for them to like
Yeah. That's your
correct.
past medical history,
And it's
right?
like and it's like and just understanding that like um
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, man. It's like, and when I was removing things on my, like on my chart, I was like deleting old like histories and stuff. Like it's like old,
yeah, it's like
old.
this isn't pertinent anymore, man. Like, like but yeah, I just think like, it's important for, me as the alcoholic, me as the addict to understand that, when I am going to
Hmm.
these whatever it may be, man, medical treatment, this, that, um, that is it is there to help me,
Yeah.
right? It really is. Like it's there for the Ryans,
Hmm.
all these other people we
Right.
talked about to have a somewhat of an understanding
Hmm.
of, this normal person. That's the best way he's going to understand. Really, outside of that education or these criteria is met, these diagnoses, there's really no other way, for them to
Yeah.
understand. That's
Well,
just the person saying you need to stop.
well,
Like
and look, let's just you know um put facts for facts, right? In this business, that's also how you're able to go to treatment
mhm.
because the insurance companies have to pay for your
Yeah, you
treatment,
have to have
right?
whatever. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so in order for that to happen, you do meet these things.
Yeah.
Whether me and you don't, whether you and I see it that way or not, um, like I was saying, there are that other group who has to pay for your treatment, who has to treat you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's just where you fit,
Mhm.
But and I didn't say all this to try to tell anybody that they're struggling to be like, hey, you're just a category
Yeah.
that fits into a criteria. Um, it's to say that I, have experienced this life and, experienced addiction. And it was just kind of like, just eye opening to look at it
Yeah.
that way,
And really it's all to help.
Hmm.
It is. It's like you said, it's for outside institutions and organizations to be able
Yeah.
to help. It's
Yep.
for
Absolutely.
the professionals to be able to help. So it's really, I mean,
So it's like, thank goodness that we do fit
correct.
into a
Yeah.
category, so that
Um,
we can get the help that we need.
and we need to talk about this check I can get too, man.
Yeah, we'll
You know,
talk.
like,
We'll talk about
off
that
air.
on
Okay. All right.
next episode.
Well, yeah, man, thank you. Interesting.
Mhm.
To look at, like you said, thanks for letting me come back.
Yeah, well,
You know, like,
just wear that shirt to the next episode.
I'll do that, man. I've got plenty. Don't worry. I went and bought about, just at the store buying $75
Those
Hawaiian
outlet
shirts.
balls.
Yeah, like, how many?
Yeah.
It's buy 4 get 4 free kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
So
thanks. I'm glad to have you back, man.
all right, well, guys, thank y'all for tuning in to another episode. Make sure to like, follow, share, do all that.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. I knew I always left something out, man.
At least I got that last time.
But thank y'all for being here with us again for another episode of Beyond the Struggle. We'll see you next time.